Hi, Mark here from the Tangent-Bound Podcast Network and host of the flagship show, the Tangent-Bound Podcast. Did you know that we over at Tangent-Bound are always looking for amazing podcasts to promote? And did you also know that we are also proud nerds and geeks of everything from movies, music, gaming, TV shows, and comic books to wrestling, MMA, soccer, and football? Whatever you can nerd or geek out about, we've got it. And if you're interested, we can help you find it. And if you're a show looking for a place to call home, we've got you covered. Side effects may include upset stomach, dizziness, tumors, shakes, and in some rare cases, death from excessive laughter. Though to be fair, it's only sometimes. Other side effects may include diarrhea, gallstones, heart palpitations, and strong desire for cookies on the dark side. Talk to your doctor and visit TangentBoundNetwork.com and see if Tangent-Bound Network is right for you.
This is a Danger Entertainment podcast. DangerEntertainment.net's Danger Entertainment Podcast Network.
Transmission commencing.
This is Wookiee Radio. Translated for the Wookiee impaired. I like that Wookiee. Your hosts, Ken, Derek, and Mike, bring you the latest news and commentary from the far reaches of the galaxy.
Hold it. Hold it. I said hold it.
Subscribe today on iTunes and Stitcher.
I just assumed it's a Wookiee.
Start listening today, and remember,
the Force will be with you, always.
We're not doctors, therapists, trained professionals of any kind, so if you feel you do need help, please reach out and get the help you need. We have a whole list of things on our files page over on Facebook at facebook.com/crazylifepodcast, and or just search on the internet for the suicide prevention hotline number, or go to NAMI.org, or whatever resource you can find. But just please reach out for help if you need it. If you feel as though you're going to harm yourself or others, definitely reach out and try not to be alone. Also, if you feel that way and you realize that you're writing a note or making plans of how you would do, like harm yourself or others, definitely reach out. That's a huge red flag. And lastly, please do not replace the idea of therapy with listening to this show. Again, if you need help, please reach out and get the help that you need, or contact us. We can try to help you find the help that you need.
Life sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. Life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time, so stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of The Crazy Life. No Jen this week. She's off playing Mrs. Claus, I guess, or hostess, or I don't know, whatever you want to call it. She's got family coming over for the holidays and what have you. So I'm Brian, and joining me as usual is Henno.
Hi, Brian.
Hello, Henno. That way everyone knows which voice is which.
Yes.
Or
Hi,
do they?
This is Henno.
Yeah.
I'm your resident alcoholic.
Yay! Wait. Yep. And I'm your resident, depressed, anxious, who knows what else. Just really messed up person. You know, whatever.
Yeah, you know what I was thinking about today was I think just for the fact that most people don't want to go way, way back and listen to like origin episodes, that it might be good to just do like a skim over the top kind of origin again.
Yeah, I was thinking that too, and I wasn't thinking about it as much for this show as much as I was thinking about it for Salty Language, because we've put out, 4.8 trillion shows or something like that, I think, at this point now, that maybe, maybe for 450 or something, because you and I just did 438, so, go check that out. You can listen to me and Heno talk about a wide range of topics.
Yes. It was a veritable smorgasbord.
It was something, as we always say on that show. It was something.
Yep.
So, first of all, thanks for listening.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever it is,
Merry Hana Ramakwansmas.
If you don't celebrate anything, hopefully you have a nice peaceful day.
Solstice? Yeah, you had a beautiful solstice, maybe?
Yeah. I heard that
last week
on the Marty and Sarah podcast. They were doing that, where they did the Happy Holidays, Merry Christmas, and then I love that, Sarah was like, if you don't celebrate anything, just have a great day, kind of a thing. And I was like, I kind of like that, so I stole it, and I'm openly admitting I stole it from her. So, and I'm sure she probably wouldn't care. She seems like a pretty positive person.
Like the 12-step groups, a lot of times will be like, all right, anybody celebrating anniversary? Nope. Well, here's for 24 hours. Congratulations.
Yeah, right?
You made it.
I like that, though, because, again, that's celebrating air quotes, little win. Because I understand 24 hours can be a massive win for some people, I'm sure.
Well, this was the first time I got when I was, in my ute as a sober human. And we went out to dinner one night, and something came up, and something about how much time somebody had was mentioned, like how long they'd been sober. And it was the first time I really got called out. And he said, the last time I checked, the world record for sobriety was 24 hours. And I was like, you're right. And it was great. I totally accepted it. I was okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things that even if you have to celebrate hey, I've been sober for 4 hours. I mean, for some people, that's a massive accomplishment,
Yeah, because there's somebody that didn't make it 2.
Exactly. That's the thing. And maybe even if it was just them, maybe they tried the day before and couldn't get past 2, and today they're at 4. Yeah. Hey, that's, progress.
Yep. And that's kind of the point, is that even somebody with a month has something to teach somebody that can't even get through a week. Yeah. Because they were able to do something the other wasn't. That's like the idea of like that person. What's the kind of the thing is they've been able to do something that you couldn't do on your own. Right. They were able to accomplish something. So that's why you seek out other people.
Yeah.
And then the person that's like, why would somebody seek me out? I've only, I've barely done 2 months. It's like, well, yeah, but compared to the 1 month person, you've done almost the impossible, because they're like going, how do you do that?
Yeah. That's twice as long. I mean, again, that 2 month person looks at someone who's at 4 months and they, man, 2 months was hard. I can't imagine 4, kind of a thing. And, so you're right. And it works both ways, because not only can you learn from the person who has made it that long, if someone just, anywhere along the path, if they, stumble a little bit, you can learn something from that as well. Like, hey, what tripped you up? Kind of a thing.
That's the key.
So I can maybe, avoid that pothole in the road,
It's truly that's one of the. It's an unfortunate thing when someone relapses or whatever. If they come back in, it's like they end up being the greatest lesson for more people than they know, and that's why I'm glad. I thank the people that come back in, because one, that's just got to be crushing, right?
Seriously, right? Yeah. Think about it. Anything it is that you think you're having success at, right? And then you stumble, fall, whatever, and now you have to go face all the people that know you've been sober for X amount of time, you know, and you know, because of mind reading and distorted thinking, ding, 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 cover those on your bingo sheet.
Nailed it.
Because of those things, you're going to assume that those people may put you down. And so to be able to face that, first of all, in my head, it shows a lot of maturity, because you're willing to go face it, but also, the fact that you can shows a lot of strength, you know, and should not be minimized at all. Of course, you know, it's even though you might feel like you stumbled, like you said, at that point you go, okay, well, when did you have the drink? You know, well, 4 hours ago. I'm like, okay, so you're this many hours sober. You know, you're back on it. You know, you stumbled, but you're right back on the road. You know, I'm sure it's not that simple, but I know it's similar in depression though. It's sometimes there's a bad day, and sometimes you blow a tire in your car. You get it fixed, or you do something to it, and you get back on the road. That's all you can do. You know, you don't want to just sit there and go, oh, why won't my tire fix itself? You know.
So the step says the only requirement for membership is the desire to stop drinking.
That's fair.
Right? It doesn't say that you have stopped.
True.
It just says that you have a desire to stop. No. Or it could be a desire to stop overeating, or a desire to stop gambling, or a desire to, you name it, desire to stop letting other people control me in codependency.
Now, can I ask you a question? Have you ever been in a group where someone is still a drinker that comes in? Like, that's like, I want to quit, but I can't?
Yes.
Does that happen? And does that happen frequently? Of course, I'm never asking you to give someone's story, but you know, okay.
It was more of this actually goes back more to like the beginnings of the program, where they literally would have booze. Like, let's say they'd go pick some guy up. Mm. We're going to go to a meeting. And they're looking at the guy in the back seat, and the guy's starting to have DTs. And it's like, reach in the glove compartment, there's a bottle in there, let him have some.
Oh, wow, okay.
Just so he can make it.
Yeah.
Right? And it was the idea that the, you know, if you have that desire to stop drinking, if you are willing, you know, to go to any length, as long as you're not disruptive, you get to be there.
Okay.
You get to be there, because otherwise all those things like act as if, all those little phrases, they become very meaningless all of a sudden. If it's this gets brought up a lot of times, speaking of Star Wars, the whole Yoda, there is no try.
Oh yeah.
And I just, it starts with a try. I didn't just juggle one day.
My favorite trying quote is, you know, the old, was it from The Simpsons, where I think it's Homer, and he's like, you know, you tried and you failed, and something like the important thing is to never try again, or something like that.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love that. But that's where, I've heard just amazingly compelling stories, and I've brought it up here before about just I'm a witness, and that's all we are, is we're just witnesses for waiting for a miracle to happen. And this it really goes out to people that have somebody in their life that is struggling. It could be anything in life that they're struggling with, whether it's a substance or mental health issue, something that they're trying to get through. You know, it could be a behavior, that kind of stuff, is to realize that you're just a witness for their miracle to happen.
Yeah.
And it's not personal that the miracle doesn't happen. It's not, you know, why can't actually this brought up at work. Somebody brought up about the idea that, oh, well, it must be a common thing that people stop, you know, drinking or whatever for their kids. And I said, actually, it's not.
Yeah.
Because alcohol's powerful, cutting, and baffling, as our literature says.
Right.
People don't stop for anybody.
I've heard a lot of people say very similar things about depression, like, you know, somebody who has depression and, oh, well, having kids must have really changed, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, no, like,
Nope.
I still have to fight this. And it's even worse now because you know, like, there's extra guilt you can pour on yourself for if you can't get out of bed or whatever it is, you know. So, yeah, it's the same idea in that, you know, you have to, it's like changing your location. You're still going to have depression. If you move to a new location, you're still an alcoholic, you know, like that doesn't change that, you know. You still have to, like you said, you have to try, you know.
And the people that are around you, they're not enough.
Right.
And it's not personal.
Yeah.
It's just the disease.
Right.
It's just where your head is.
I keep trying to get that through with people when they, you know, the stigma of suicide being selfish, you know, kind of a thing. And it's the same thing. It's like you don't understand when you're in that mindset, you can't think of anyone else. It isn't that you don't or you don't want to. You cannot. And
you can't. One phrase that gets brought up a lot is you cannot see the true from the false.
Mm-hmm.
They're all confused together. And so you have a person, I've heard these unbelievable stories where somebody is married to, that person is sober and they're married to someone that keeps drinking.
Yeah.
Like, how can you be with that person? How can you be with that person? And it's like, well, every day that person wakes up in the morning and has a desire to stop drinking. And sometime by the end of the day, that desire is gone.
Right.
And they drink. And you know, he had this great, I'm referring to a story that I heard. And at one point he said, you know, the one thing that I've learned is we don't leave our wounded on the field, you know, that, you know, and as long as they have that desire, that's what our, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. It's what our book says. It's what this says, you know, and he says, I'm just here to be a witness for when the miracle happens. And the whole point of that story was to talk about that day when the miracle happened.
Yeah.
And what an unbelievable day that was. And it had nothing to do with our storyteller.
Right.
It had to do with the other person who had the inside job to do, to find that place where they finally said, I've had enough.
Yeah.
I'm done.
And it's
that's
amazing
the story that I hear more often.
Because maybe they wouldn't have had that moment if you weren't there too, you know?
Exactly.
And I'm not saying that you should stay just for that reason necessarily. I'm not advocating, you know, everyone should do what they feel they need to do.
Make their own decisions. Yep.
Yeah. But like I said, there's days where I can't get out of bed that I've literally had my mom come to the door and be like, get up. You know, you have to get, you know, like that kind of thing. And she's not doing it to be a jerk to me or anything like that. She's doing it because she loves me. And she's doing it because she knows that sometimes you need that. And sometimes you still can't. But there are days where you're kind of teetering the line. And on days like that, if someone comes in and goes, come on, let's go, let's do something, or come on, get up, let's have dinner, that kind of thing. Sometimes that's what you need. And, you know, and if that person wasn't there, you know which way you'll probably teeter, you know, because it's easier to just stay in bed. It's easier to just have another drink, you know, because that's what your body and brain tell you need. So, yeah. Boy, we started out with a real cheerful.
But it's good because it's the truth. It's funny. It's talking about that idea of doing an origin story. It is literally our origin story.
It is. Yeah.
It is about the day when you finally said, you know, I've had enough.
This is the ghost of crazy past.
Yeah, exactly. It really is. Wow, I never thought about that. What a great podcast idea.
Oh, we totally should have. Well, I mean, we still can. Let's pivot right into it.
It's like what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. That's the whole thing of recovery.
Here's what it'll be, okay? This episode is the ghost of crazy past and the ghost of crazy present. Next episode, since it'll be the New Year's episode, will be our crazy future.
It goes to crazy future. Exactly.
So let's I guess slide into, unless you have more. I'm sorry, I cut you off with all that.
No, it was You know, sometimes you land on the topic that just flows from me, and that's one of them. It just goes.
Yeah. No, I understand, and I could talk about it a lot too, because like I said, you know, you and I've talked about this a lot too. I think that's why we can also have a real easy back and forth on this one, because it's part of what bonded us as friends was when we started going, oh wow, that parallels with this, and you know, so I can kind of get in that headspace a little bit, even though we don't. We're not dealing with the same thing. They're still playing on the same field sometimes. You know?
Well, that's one thing I wanted to talk about was like, okay, why did you start the podcast? Why did I end up on the podcast?
Yeah.
And the why I ended up on the podcast was exactly that, because listening to you guys talking about social anxiety one day, and I'm going, all right, this has nothing to do with my ism, but I relate to all of it. I was just like, holy shnikes.
And it's really cool too, because this is one of the things I think is really neat. Me listening to you on Angela's Awesome Podcast was where I was like, whoa, I deal with that stuff too. Or the therapy thing I've talked about. For those who don't know, Henno, when he went into therapy, was pretty stubborn about how it was gonna go. I listened, but right before I went to therapy and was like, I'm not gonna do this, because he openly is like, I shouldn't have done that. And I was like, I'm gonna be smarter than that. And as a result, you know, like I said on last episode, my therapist telling me that, you know, I'm one of her most like open patients, you know, so and I take that as a great compliment, because in my head that tells me I'm going in with the right mind space as far as that goes, you know, trying to get help and whatever. So, but then you, from listening to us, were able to pick up an extra appreciation for the anxiety stuff and whatever. And then spending time with me and seeing me in that element too. I remembered you also mentioning that you saw someone else and you were like, oh, I get it. Like, this is where they are right now. And that is an amazing thing for someone to be able to get, because when you gain insight to something someone's suffering from, you can practice empathy, because you get it, you know, even if you don't understand exactly what it is, at least you can go, okay, this is probably what they need right now, without it being a know-it-all kind of a thing. Like, again, we're in Chicago. Henno saw that I was like looking like a deer in headlights, my eyes darting around and whatever, and was like, you know, like, you want to go back to the hotel room and just get away from the noise? And I was like, yes, you know, like, so, I think that's really cool. And as far as why Jen and I, it's too bad Jen's not here for this one, but, Jen and I started the podcast. She contacted me, actually. I had intended to just, honestly, I had intended to start a blog and just really put it into that. And in the back of my head, I had kind of thought about like, well, I'll get some blogs down, then I'll start doing podcasts maybe based on those blogs. And, so when she was like, hey, I have an idea to do this podcast, do you want to do it with me? And I was like, yes.
Yeah, because it was right there.
Right. And I'd already been becoming kind of open with talking about it, but I was really getting into the mindset of, I'm done being quiet about this. I'm tired of people minimizing mental health. I'm tired of feeling like a less than because I can't go do stuff. These kind of things. And it's like, this is how I'm going to fight the fight. You know, this is how I'm going to try to end some stigma for this.
When you got to that point of where you wanted to speak up, had you hit the point where you were open to your own recovery yet, or were you still kind of not quite there on your own recovery, but you wanted to at least be open about what you were going through and what other people go through?
All right. Well, what happened with me was that I think it was right around the time we started Salty Languages when I finally went and got diagnosed. And after that, I was honestly, right from that point, I was pretty open about it. Like, anytime somebody would ask me something, I just started talking about it. I've gotten more and more and more and more open about it as time's gone on, to where I'm like, if I hear anyone even remotely with something that I kind of feel like I can talk about to them on, I will. You know, of course, always prefaced with I'm not a doctor, trained professional, whatever. But by doing this show, I really felt like, you know, like Salty Language is a fun show with my best friend. And, you know, it gives us that opportunity to just, you know, just go be goons for, you know, a couple hours. But I didn't want, I like this show because even though we have fun and we joke around at times and stuff, it's like I want to make sure that the message rings true here. I don't want it to get buried with, you know, silliness and all that kind of stuff as much. But I was pretty open from the get-go, though, I think. Again, there's still things I don't talk about on here. You know, there are some things, and you know it because I've talked with you about some things where it's like, I'm not going to talk about this on the show, but I'm going to, you know, but it's not much. There's a lot that I talk about with you and Jen or Tony or whoever it is, and that I don't, that I will then immediately come on here and start talking about. And the main reason for it was, like, it took me so long to get to that point of being willing to ask for help. And I was like, oh my God, like once I started, I was like, this has been here the whole time. What am I doing? You know, and then especially it blew up even more after my my therapist handed me the distorted thinking worksheet. And I was like, oh my God, you know, when I had my huge aha therapy moment.
That worksheet, like, I know there's multitudes of them, but that worksheet blows people's minds.
Yeah. Yeah, if you go to therapy and you haven't got one of those, ask your therapist for it. They'll have it on hand and they'll probably be more than willing to give it to you. If not, you can easily Google and find all of them.
Yeah. Anytime I share it with someone, they're just like they're reading down the list and you just see their eyes just opening.
And I guess I should, you know, the obligatory show plug. We did a whole episode on it, so go back and find. I tend to title the shows what we talk about. So as far as the topic, so you know, go back and find that. We talk a little more at length, and as we'll tell you at the end of the show, how to contact us. But I'm always, you know, open to talk about my journeys with it. Again, keeping in mind, I'm not a doctor, trained professional, whatever. So.
You're a person with experiences.
Yeah, and that's really it. And much like you were saying, it's like I look down the road and I see there's a long way to go, but I also look back and go, wow, you know, like there's a lot of road behind me now. You know, we've been doing this show for what, 4 years, 3 years, whatever it's been, and I've been doing Salty Language for 8 years, so or going toward 9. You know, it's a long time.
That's wild.
But I just really wanted to maybe help people not wait 20 years to go get help and be miserable and fight, you know, have this internal, you know, bully that just won't shut up, you know.
That's the thing that also goes with that, the idea of like somebody that relapses or and then has a struggle coming back in. You're feeling the pressure of everybody else. Now just think about the pressure we put on ourselves already.
Oh man,
with that.
And I'm terrible about it because not only am I, this is where, you know, you get the 1-2 of depression, anxiety, you know, because depression tells you you're worthless and anxiety tells you basically, you know, like, well, if you do this, it's going to be terrible. And then depression goes, yeah, don't bother, you know, like what?
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. Anxiety throws the fear into your solution.
Yeah. And that stops you. So you end up and then you guilt yourself for not acting, you know, because you've been froze by fear or whatever. So it's the old, you know, snake eating its own tail kind of thing. I mean, it just feeds itself. That's why it's very important to, you know, go find some help and try to minimize the cycle as much as possible.
So 2015, May 17th was the first episode of The Crazy Life.
Wow. So, so we're 3 years. We're going toward the 4-year mark. So, yeah.
And then I guessed it June 29th, 2015. That was what I was just a guest on the show.
That's right. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, we had you on once. And then it's one of those like, being right where you're supposed to be moments is the way I saw it, because you were on, and I think it wasn't too long after that you and Angela went on hiatus, and me and Jen were like, we should see if Hedda wants to jump on with us, like permanently, or at least while you're on hiatus or whatever. And I remember as soon as I asked you, I remember you were like, yes. So it was awesome. Yeah. And, which was great for us, because that gives us, first of all, it gives you another voice that has completely different experiences than us. But it also gives us, a third person. So it gives us freedom for like this week where Jen can't do the show. And instead of me scrambling to find someone or, throwing something up just myself or whatever, you and I can have a conversation instead.
Yeah. And it's been it still amazes me how much I get out of doing this every week.
Mm-hmm.
And as it's like parallels with whatever work I might be doing with my own recovery, it just bolsters it. And sometimes it goes further because it's so much more open.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that alcoholism, there's a thing with 12-step groups where we try to stick with a singleness of purpose,
mm-hmm.
because it makes things easier. You don't walk into a group sitting around talking about alcoholism with your problems with marijuana.
Yeah.
Because it's just different, or pills, or overeating, or whatever it is, because people won't relate. And that's where the idea of singleness of purpose came from.
Yeah.
That, though, becomes limiting after a while.
Yeah,
because we're only talking about one thing. And there are, we have the other problems we have that are related to whatever it is. I mean, think about, it doesn't matter whether it's addiction or mental health or what, we all end up hitting money as a topic. We hit relationships as a topic.
Yeah.
We hit all these things as a topic. And those become part of the conversation within the primary focus.
Yeah.
And I was starting to really feel I wanted more.
Okay.
And that's why this was really important for me, because even though Angela and I talked about, when we were doing that podcast, we talked a lot more about physical health and, along with
nutrition
mental wellness
and stuff. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Nutrition, things like that.
Yeah.
Talking about mental health issues has really opened my mind
mm-hmm.
in a way that whatever other work I do or what other podcasts I do never would have done it. It just wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And my empathy level, like you said, has grown so much.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been such a positive, because so many people suffer with, so many people that I interact with that have mental health struggles.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that I can accept them for who they are, and that I understand.
Yeah, and understanding a lot of this stuff. Then this is why I advocate for people to, like, if you have friends that are like, my anxiety, this or this, or I have OCD, and I'm meaning diagnosed these things most, not so much, I just like a clean house, I must be OCD, as we've discussed on a previous episode also about choosing your words wisely. But if you have friends who have these situations, you can read up on it a little bit and go, okay, what are things I shouldn't say to people? There's tons of lists of those things out there for pretty much every condition. And a lot of times, you can just learn what a lot of us just need. Like I loved on the local news, was it a week or two ago? They did a little snippet on the show about what to do for people who are grieving this time of year. And basically, like, instead of doing certain, like, saying, hey, I'm here for you, like, they even mentioned, like, go cook them dinner, or grab dinner and go hang out, watch a movie, or something, grab a pizza, go watch a movie with them. Like, do like service stuff, or if it's somebody who's, maybe help them clean their house or do their laundry or something like that, to kind of, just take some weight off of their shoulders in the moment, kind of a thing. And I really dug that you're starting to see more of that on the news and stuff now. Like, like these, I mean, first of all, that's just, that's just an awesome thing to do for somebody anyway. But, on top of it, it is though, like it's, even though like the year my dad died, it was in October. That Christmas was really hard. Not having him around for that first Christmas, it was really, really hard. And I really could not get into any sort of Christmas mood, or the spirit of the holidays or what. I just could not do it. And I had people luckily around me who were very much like, no, you still have to go do things. You have to be part of things, these kind of things, being of service to me. And it made a huge difference. So, like you said, but if people don't try to understand any of this, sometimes you can have the best intentions in the world, but do the absolute worst thing you could do for somebody, in a moment. And you don't mean to. You just totally,
it's true.
Yeah,
it's true, because I think inherently we want to help, and oftentimes helping becomes fixing.
Yes,
we want to fix. Because we don't want people to suffer. We want them to not have suffering. We want them to be okay. But sometimes you have to let somebody not be okay for a while.
Right.
Because again, inside job, you have to become okay by yourself. Really, right. It has to start in that place, whatever that importance is. And I instantly go to, it has to start inside. Well, no, it doesn't always have to start inside. Sometimes it can start outside. Like, let's say you have a child and you're in a funky place and you sit down with your child and your child just does something or says something that is the trigger.
Yeah.
And makes you go,
or a friend,
yeah, that's
even,
right.
Like you could sit down with somebody and maybe you think you're doing great, and maybe they'll sit down and be like, hey, are you okay? Because you're acting or doing blah, blah, blah kind of a thing. I just want to make sure you're okay. And I've done that with people sometimes, and they'll be like, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that. Like you think you're doing great, and then somebody's kind of like, or you think you're doing terrible, and somebody maybe will say something to the opposite of basically like, no, you're doing great, kind of a thing. And I'm like, oh, and you just don't know what the little act in one way or the other can really kind of move somebody and change the trajectory of what they're doing, and for the better. I mean, of course, you obviously you can send somebody the wrong way too, but we're not talking as much about that, But you're right. Like a kid, a friend, whoever it is could say something, and all of a sudden it just clicks in your head. Like, I got to do something about this.
Yeah. Or even just for that little bit, it's like, okay, oh, I am going to feel better. And I think that's one of the lessons. One of the greatest lessons I've learned is that idea of acceptance and knowing that I'm in the right place, that right now is where I'm supposed to be. This is how it's supposed to feel. And this is, and I'm exactly in the right place at the right time. And it's a weird thing to finally come to that, especially when you're not in a good place. You're like, oh yeah, really, but this is how I'm supposed to feel.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where that is, for me, was where growth started. So when I had a breakup, and it's like, oh, I have a broken heart. That's right. I'm supposed to have a broken heart.
Right.
This isn't the world falling apart. This is me having a broken heart.
Yeah.
Or I lost a loved one. Okay, yeah, I'm supposed to be very sad right now.
Mm-hmm.
This is natural. This is how I'm supposed to feel. Okay, I'm going to be sad right now and go on with my day.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to do my day sad. But that's okay, because that's how I'm supposed to be.
Right.
And it's not permanent. It's temporary.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when, before I learned that, everything felt like it was going to last forever.
Totally. Well, again, distorted thinking, right?
That's it.
Catastrophizing.
Yep. that this is never going to go away.
Yep.
And there's nothing, like, I think about how just the really, like, and I'm going to bring other people into this misery too.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah.
but it's just, I mean, like, you can't help it. You just feel like,
You
okay,
become a
my
black
world
hole.
is like,
And I can't think of a better like example, but you literally become a black hole and you start sucking in everything around you. And that's why a lot of times people, try to get away basically because they don't want to be sucked in. And a lot of times you don't even realize you're doing it. That ends up being the worst. And that's why I said sometimes, somebody will like, hey, are you okay? You've really been this, or this. And, sometimes people be like, I have, Now, also, be prepared. If you ever say something like that to somebody, be prepared. They also may get very defensive, because they may feel that they're being accused.
Yeah.
So tread carefully. Choose your words carefully. Just try not to be accusatory and try not to make it sound like you're accusing somebody. I mean, unless that is your intention, I guess. But like, hey, you're an alcoholic, or hey, I think you have depression. Sometimes you do have to be stark with somebody, or hey, it's going to have to be this or this, whatever it happens to be in your life, But again, go live your truth. But yeah,
part of my story that was really sad was the friends that were too afraid to tell me.
Yeah, that's always tough.
And I bring it up a lot because it's just the truth,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't blame them.
No,
I understand because I was scary.
Yeah,
like I was a scary human. I would want to avoid me.
Yeah. Well, and like I said about my situation, is like when I see people who are where I was and I see how negative they are about stuff and I'm like, oh my God, was I that bad? Like, oh my God, no wonder why this or this, kind of a thing. And cause you're out of that forest a little bit. So you're able to then start seeing what's going on. And you're like, ooh, that is not who I want to be. And that, like, for me, fueled, like, okay, I got to keep fighting at that so I don't become that person who's doing these things that, giving off that energy I don't want to give off or being whatever. And it's no judgment to anyone else because, again, anyone who's gone through, like, what I've gone through, you've pretty much been that person. If you've been in the deep depths of depression, you've definitely been that person that's the black hole, basically.
Yeah.
You're the Debbie Downer of the group kind of a thing. I mean, whether you want to be or not, you probably have been. So yeah, so I get it. I could see it's like, when you wake up and realize like, wow, I'm a jerk.
Yeah. And that's,
or, well, maybe not I'm a jerk, but this makes me a jerk.
Yeah, certain behaviors or whatever. Yeah. And that's the, boy, talk about, that's a real big step in getting out of it is when you finally realize that, I did some things, but it's not who I am. It doesn't define me.
Right.
One thing that I've noticed with a lot of different types of recovery is there's this point where people realize like, wow, I was not in my right mind.
Yeah.
Like I have, and that's where that part where you can't see the truth from the false.
Yeah.
When you finally start to see the truth and you start seeing where you were false, where you couldn't see that, and now you can, is a huge awakening step. And that doesn't mean it's all gone.
Right.
Because that brings us to, why do we do this podcast? Because there's no finish line.
Right.
And that I need to check in with it all the time. I need to talk about now I am no longer a black hole, and I'm trying to function in the real world. And it's, how am I functioning? How am I getting through it? What am I doing to stay emotionally and spiritually I love that term, on the beam, instead of falling off the beam? What am I doing? Checking in, having some accountability, all of that, because it's not like you suddenly stop it's like everything's fixed. It doesn't work that way.
Well, and as we've both learned, there's times where you think everything's going great, and you don't bother with the tune-up. And much like your car, if everything's running great, most of the time you might be like, it needs a tune-up because of the, it's due. But you'll be like, it's running great. I'm not going to worry about it. And then something goes wrong. And you're like, oh, geez. Preventative care isn't just for going to see like your primary care doctor. Like, for people like me jumping back into therapy occasionally, going to a chiropractor once in a while. Heno mentioned that, was it a week or two ago, when you were talking about that, how you hadn't gone in a while, and it's like, I need to go for a couple weeks to, get myself back, get myself realigned.
And
literally,
I shouldn't have let myself get to that point.
Exactly.
And that's the complacency. Isn't it weird how we get complacency with success?
Yep.
Things get better. Oh, I'm going to stop doing what got me better.
Yeah.
Why do I do that? That makes no sense.
You would think as hard as you work to get out or to that point, you would go, okay, it took me a ton of work to get here. So it clearly can't be, I'm just going to put it on autopilot from here. But that is our nature. Our nature really is to do it.
I think a lot of it is because also, I want to say it's because of our physical medicine that we deal with, where you have a symptom, you go in, the symptom gets treated, and now you're good.
Yeah. Well, sure. Right? Like you go to the chiropractor for a few weeks and you're like, I feel great. I don't need to go anymore. You go to, like you said, you go to your primary care, when you have whatever it is, you get,
you have an infection. They give you some antibiotics.
Yeah.
It gets better. You're good.
Yeah.
You don't have to go back. You don't need more antibiotics. You're on your way.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't we apply that to other things in our life?
Well,
it's the furthest from the truth.
Well, and the worst part is that we don't learn from it. A lot of us will, whether it's therapy or doctors or whatever it is, going to the dentist, whatever it happens to be for somebody, we'll go, okay, well, if I only go to the dentist once a year, going to that cleaning is not going to be a fun experience, right? If you go twice a year, it's way more tolerable. And if you, take care of yourself in the meantime, well, if I only go to therapy once every 6 months, not going to have the same effect on me if I go once every month and a half or a month or whatever, because I'm keeping myself on the road the whole time. And there's nothing wrong with, like when I stopped going before, when there was a change, part of it was on purpose, and it wasn't a coast thing, but it was more of a, okay, let's see, like take the training wheels off at that point. Can I ride without this, or is this something I still do need to do? And I realized for a while I think I was doing fine, but it's like, okay, well, maybe I don't need it as much as I used to, but I still need it. If nothing else, just once in a while, just a steadying hand on the back while you're riding the bike to make sure you don't fall, Yeah. And that's pretty much where I got.
That's what we do here too, is that same idea. It's like we're trying to be accountable to somebody else. We're also open to having somebody call us on it.
Yes.
Because and we're also open to new experiences. Jen has shared about making major changes in her life with medicine or something, and then went, okay, like I love to say, it's like you can, if you want to stop, you can have your misery back. It's always refundable.
Yep.
If it's not working for you, whatever it is, I like the idea of we have the right to be wrong.
Yeah.
And so, I'm going to try maybe changing some aspect of my recovery, and I might have to rely more heavily on some other tools. Like if I've actually have had some friends share recently about, okay, I'm no longer taking certain medicine, but I'm bringing my tools to bear instead, and it's helping.
Right.
It's not easy. And Jen talked about that a lot too. She had to be, a little bit more vigilant about something. She may, talk to her husband about it. And those were parts that we talked about that here openly. And when things didn't seem to be working out, we were honest about like, man, it doesn't seem like that's working out.
Mm-hmm. Well, and if you remember, part of that time she was doing that, like you said, willingness to call each other out. You and I did call her out a couple of times on some stuff where, she was like, oh, I'm doing great, blah, blah, blah. And we were kind of like, are you though? 'Cause this, and, and it isn't about us trying to be right. It's just, making sure you're being honest and not distorting your thinking.
Yeah, and it's because about common goal.
Right, because otherwise, literally, it's confirmation bias. Like, well, if I go off the medicine, do I need the medicine? You go off it, and you're like, I feel fine. I don't need it, And other people see that you're sliding back into other things that you don't see you're sliding into, but in your head, you're like, I feel great,
And that's that's why I will talk myself into anything.
Yeah.
My brain is a dangerous neighborhood, and you want to go into there, like when I'm in there all the time, I can make sure that anything I feel needs validation, has validation, and that kind of thing it's a given no matter what. And even having one person to talk to, like, confirmation bias can also apply to who I pick
totally.
To bounce things off of.
Yeah. Yeah, because you find somebody you think is going to agree with you. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
you can find somebody.
Not to mention, if I go, hey, Henno, I think I should get a new whatever, here's blah, 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 but I just conveniently leave out the twice as many reasons I shouldn't do that. I'm trying to essentially skew it so that you give me the answer that I want. Then I go, well, okay, well, Henno thinks it's a good idea, so that's my check, Yeah. So, yeah, that's where that importance of calling your friends out or somebody on their stuff is important, because sometimes, like, you have to make sure they're telling you all the truth, not 99% of it or whatever.
Yeah, and I also don't necessarily like the person that's constantly calling the question.
Correct. Yeah. And again, we talked about that on an episode also, about the difference between being honest and just being a jerk, basically. Or the need to be right, really, is what it comes down to.
Yeah. And I like that. The one thing that I think we've done here is also accepting each other at those times.
Yeah.
You don't need to call people on. I think once you get into recovery of any kind, it's so easy to quickly pass judgment on others who aren't quite where you're at.
That's the big warning I give anyone if you do go look into the Distorted Thinking worksheet, is it's real simple to become a know-it-all. And just make sure you remember these two things. The need to be right is on the Distorted Thinking worksheet, as well as basically trying to fix people and stuff. So, just, worry about how it affects you. Notice in others maybe these things, but you don't have to always point them out, because nobody wants to hear that.
Yeah, well, and also people have a right to be wrong.
Yep.
And they have a right to live their lives the way that they want to, and it's not up to me to decide that. That's where I love the idea of a higher power. Mm-hmm. It's that place where it's like, it's not up to me, it's up to somebody else.
Yeah.
But it's not me.
Right.
And I'm not that person. And I'm not their higher power, and I'm not supposed to be. Now, if they come asking for my help, that's different.
Yes.
But just because I know something, you've experienced something, or I've gone through something, doesn't mean that other person wants to hear about it.
Right. Now, and then, in the way I've approached that with some people is I will pull the, my therapist told me about blah, blah, blah. And then if they're like, oh, really? Then you engage. If they just go, okay, then it's like, okay, they don't want to hear it. And then that's it, And I have talked with some people about distorted thinking, because it's very much something we all do. Like, there's nobody who doesn't do at least one thing on that list. And it doesn't make you a bad person at all. It just makes you, air quote, normal.
Makes you human.
Yeah, exactly. That's all it is. There's a difference, though, is when it starts becoming your pattern, when it starts becoming detrimental to your relationships or your life and everything. So that's when you have to start being careful of a lot of the stuff. Again, like catastrophizing. If you take every once in a while, if you're just like, oh, geez, that makes you human. If every little thing that happens to you is the worst thing ever, you're either a teenager or, you're using distorted thinking. So, because I laugh at how many times I've heard some random person's teenager talk about this or this being the end of the world or the worst thing ever kind of a thing. It's, very laughable.
Yeah, it really is. But that's when you have to take these things into consideration. Yeah. And that's where I think it's important to revisit where I came from.
Yeah.
And if I think about my first 6 months of sobriety, I was emotional. I was fearful. I was like that.
I think a really great way to look at it is I remember you saying how one of the things you had to learn was how to feel feelings. And, the fact you should be fearful, emotional. These are things you should be experiencing, going back to the other, like, oh, this is a normal kind of situation.
I'm supposed to feel the way, but I was taking it to the point of it's always going to be like this.
Oh, yeah, totally.
You don't know what it's like.
Right.
And it was too far.
Yeah.
And even years later, it was somewhere around 3 or 4 years where I had a complete meltdown in a lot of ways where I was talking the talk, but I wasn't walking the walk. I had gotten that little bit of, hey, everything's better, so I'm good.
Do you know what's really funny about that is the original planned topic for tonight? Right there would have been an awesome segue into it. But we'll get to it in a couple weeks because I really like this idea. I want to see this through.
But it was this period where I wasn't being honest with myself.
Right.
And it wasn't a failure. It was just another stop along the journey. There was a journey, and I went down. Angela and I brought this up as a topic one time. Don't be afraid of detours.
Right. Yeah.
Because a detour can bring you something really neat or new. When you go for a drive, try a different road every once in a while.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful that you don't stray too far. And that's what happened to me. I just strayed too far, and I needed to come back. Yeah. And I needed to rediscover whatever it was that got me going to begin with. And that's why, for me, talking about how about my path and telling my story is very important because it reminds me of all those things. I don't want to forget about them. I don't need to live in like the bad stuff, but I do need to remember it. And I do need to appreciate it from the standpoint of wins, and also from the perspective that always more will be revealed to me, that there is no finish line, and that sometimes it takes a while. Yeah. I'm 12 years into this now. It wasn't like at 3 years everything was sunny and awesome. No, there was still more learning to be done. There was always something to approach because the set of tools that I learned have to get applied to every single change that occurs in my life. And that to think like, okay, I've been sober for 4 or 5 years now, so getting married is going to be not a problem. Or getting a new job is not going to be a problem. That is something I would never do again, because every change in life is another opportunity to apply the tools, to grow, to learn. Mm-hmm. To put it into practice. We can read books all day. We can see therapists. We can do our groups and all that stuff. But the real work happens outside the room.
Yeah.
It happens in the real world. The real test is just showing up for work every day.
Yeah.
And applying what we've learned and what we're trying to do. That's really where it's at. Or the grocery store or whatever.
Dude, you're seriously, you're
Am I on the topic?
You're right on the topic. Yeah. But I don't want to read the whole article, so I'm not going to go into it. Well, because I actually I want to, like I said, I kind of want to do this show as a past and present, and then next week we'll tell. Like we can also because I want to move into like how was our week kind of part here, but we'll lead next week with that, and then we'll do the future. So then across the two, it's a seamless transition, right? Yes. But yeah, I'm with you. You definitely have to you definitely every once in a while have to pull out the photo album and look behind you, and if for no other reason go, okay, I don't want to be that. I have to remember to keep working. Or that sometimes it's okay. Like sometimes, like if you're running a mile, you have to keep running, like if you're on a track, you're going to loop back to somewhere you were once before. And that's okay. That's part of the journey sometimes. And that's okay.
That's a great analogy.
Because we all do. I'm sure you've been somewhere where you're like, wow, I haven't had this happen in X years. As far as like your recovery goes. And I've run into it with depression where something will happen and things just are cyclical sometimes and they'll pop their ugly head back up, which I'll get to in a few minutes. But, and that's, and you have to go, I'm not moving backwards. This can basically just pop out of the road at any time kind of a thing. It's the Spanish Inquisition, Yeah,
it's a good friend of mine, Bill, says, if there were no ups, ups and downs are good. When you're in a hospital and you're hooked up to the EKG machine, you don't want a flat line. You want an up and down because that's your heartbeat. Yeah. That's life. Yeah. That living is ups and downs and it's okay. And I felt it today at work. I had ups and downs at work today.
Yeah.
At one point I was a little bit in my head and I was like, just give it some time. Don't worry. I was felt weird about something that I put my foot down on something and I'm still not really comfortable putting my foot down. I feel like I'm a jerk or I shouldn't have said it that way or, and the distorted thinking wants to come in and say, yeah, but you're right. Or somebody had to say it or whatever it was. And it's just like, okay, shut the committee up. Move on to the next thing. Yeah. And you know what happened? I was sitting there and all of a sudden I had an opportunity to be of service. And what really tripped me out is sometimes when I hear that someone's having a difficulty with something that I'm supposed to go help them fix, I sometimes will groan a little bit and be like, oh, geez, how do you,
Yeah.
Never even had the thought in my head. It was like, so-and-so needs, that this was a problem last night. And I'm like, all right, I'm there. I literally popped up out of my chair and I headed out the door and I went right up there. And I have to walk into somebody's house with one person that I do know and another person I've never met. And usually that is anxiety for me. That is like, I don't want to have to communicate. I don't want to talk. I don't want to, I just don't want to do this right now.
Right.
I had a moment where I thought about it where I was just like, usually I have some anxiety about this. Why am I being so excited about doing this? Well, because guess what? Doing some service got me out of my head and then the rest of my day was a piece of cake.
Yeah. It's always nice when you can find that distraction like that.
Yeah, that was my win today, was just rolling with the flow. And I want to keep doing that because we have more and more people coming in and I want to be that same attitude when I popped out of that chair.
Yeah.
That it was positive. It felt so good too. There was just like no question about it. There was no second thought. There was no, it's almost the end of the day. No, it was boom. I'm up. I'm there.
Right.
And what it was also about was living in the moment because I was approaching to find out what was wrong and what I could do without any prejudgments of the situation. I didn't prejudge any of it. I went in and I didn't, and I listened and I heard what they had to say. And then I went and I looked at what it could have been and I said, this is what I think is going on. And they said, that makes sense. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do to prevent it from happening. And it just felt like it wasn't me almost,
Right. Yeah.
But I guess that's when I talk about like, there's there's this parallel person in my life who is everything that I want to be. And the closer I can get to that person, the happier I am and the more joy I feel in my life. And I feel I got really close today.
I used to describe it to people years ago. I've described it to some people, that were like comic book nerd fans or friends of mine. Also, I should say, I want to make sure people understand I'm not putting anyone down. I'm part of that group, but that essentially it was almost like, have you seen on The Flash, like where he vibrates at different frequencies?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like literally, that's what I feel like, right? Is that the person I want to be and who I am? A lot of times we're vibrating at two different frequencies, and every once in a while they overlap, or we get real close, and you're like, oh, I'm right there, and then that separate back out sometimes, and that's essentially like I'm with you. It's I very much like that because you can get a hint of like this is. In my own head, it's like, this is my potential. This is not just my potential, but this is what I want out of myself. And, when you hit near that or hit it, you're like, you get an awesome feeling out of it, so.
And it's doable. It's repeatable. Like it didn't feel like, it wasn't, like when you have those days and especially with anyone that goes from, that has moments of mania where they have those real up days, where everything is just firing on all cylinders, then that happens. Like it's almost like it's expected. The reason that it was important to me today is because there was a point during the day where I'm like, I am really tired. Like I was really grumpy.
Yeah.
And then this happened. And that's why it was significant to me, because it wasn't because I was just having one of those on days or hyper, hyper focused days.
Right.
This was a normal day where there's normal ups and downs. And so that means to me, this is repeatable. Yeah. I just need to remember this.
Right. Because the average day is going to have ups and downs. Not all of them. There are obviously going to be some days where it's one way or the other, but most days have ups and downs. And that's why, that with me, with depression and stuff, it's like, it's taken me a lot to recognize the ups and downs because I've been so used to just the flat line, the indifference, essentially, that finding, and the thing is, like, for me, the flat line's not in the middle. The flat line was lower,
it was
basically.
Lower, yeah.
So not only, you want that bar to move up, but also to move down because you don't want to run, you don't want to redline it, you definitely want to have some downs because, your body needs to recover. You can't be in fight or flight all the time. That's really bad for you. Like it's not going to turn out well. So, like today I was on just real, like, man, I don't know, just real high alert. We had to go to the store for a couple things, and man, we pull up, the parking lot's packed, because it's 2 days before, well, tomorrow's Christmas Eve. Well, technically today is Christmas Eve, but given the time frame, here anyway, and we get inside, and it just seemed like everywhere we were, there was just people. And I actually, while we were in the store, had to kind of step off to the side. And I was with my mom, and I told her, I was like, I just need to stand where there's not 20 people for a minute, and again, I need space. I need to see and feel space around me, and then I'm okay, And after that, I was like, okay. And then we went and got the rest of the stuff, and we got out of the store. And when we got out to the car, I just stood there and I looked up at the sky because we had a gorgeous day here today. It was like 54 degrees, sunny, freaking amazing for Michigan in late December. Oh, man. Right? I didn't even have a jacket on today, So I just stood there and looked up at the sky and just kind of focused on that. And just breathe in, breathe out, just get, and then, and she asked me if I was okay. And I was like, yep, I just need a minute. Like, this is my reset, basically. Like, just, bring in, pure stuff, get rid of that anxiety to the best of my ability. And obviously it doesn't quite work that fast. It'd be amazing if it all of a sudden was just snap your fingers and it's gone, but it doesn't work that fast. But, it was
Do you
nice.
feel it like a slow ramping up? Like back to normal? Or?
Do you mean to normal? Yeah, it feels... It very much can go from 0 to 60 anxiety-wise. Like, I can just be in a scenario and all of a sudden it's like, oh, geez.
Yeah, the anxiety is there, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes the anxiety itself is a slow crawl. Like, I can just feel it building in me. And like today, it was kind of in between those two. It was fairly quick, but I also felt it building. The more we moved around, I felt it just getting worse. But as far as getting better, it's a very slow drop, most of the time, which is fine, because if it just boom and dropped right back down, it would be probably really bad for you also, to just all of a sudden you just kind of spike the other way.
You're like, okay, I'm fine now.
Yeah. But picture if you're at like high alert and then all of a sudden it's just,
Yeah, you're not. That would be.
You're going to crash, basically.
Yeah. So it would be better to have something that kind of slowly starts, and whether you want to use the snowball.
Yeah. The problem is it never seems quite fast enough. It's like when you're trying to get air out of I don't know, like if you're widening up like a big one of those parachutes they use in like elementary school when you're trying to fold it up, and the air just won't quite get out of it, but you keep squeezing it.
You're trying to flatten it down. Yeah,
that's kind of the best way I can describe it.
That's funny.
So, but I'll tell you, I have been beating myself up bad the last few days, and just over money, and I have just been feeling just worthless. Just not really. Most of it's going to be money based, which we talked about a little bit earlier. Is I'm notorious for beating myself up over feeling bad about money and stuff. It's something that's always been there for me. And, I keep working on it, and I try not to and all that stuff. But, like we said earlier, a boxer can have perfect practices, but go into a fight and get knocked out. It's just, and that's literally what happens sometimes is you're like, yeah, I got my tools, I'm ready to go, I'm good. And then you get punched right in the face, and you just fall down and hit the mat. And my punches have been landing. So, it's been a rough few days for me. Tomorrow's Christmas Eve, and Christmas comes, and in a few, I think it's next week I have therapy again. So honestly, it's like, man, I kind of wish it was this week, like later this week or something, but I'll be all right. I think it's just, I hate when it gets like this, but on the upside, my win for the week is that on top of all of this stuff and just feeling like just running my head into the wall is getting me nowhere kind of a thing. The win for the week is that when I was at therapy the last time, she gave me a homework assignment, basically, which was when I'm having these kind of feelings to write down the event. Hold on, I got it right here. Let me pull my sheets out. It's a thought record. That's what it's called. And, you write down the situation, then you write down what thoughts you're having, what emotions you're going through, and then what behaviors you're taking off your emotions and thoughts, basically. There's another step to it, but that is for later. That's alternate thought, which is basically like, what could you be thinking in that scenario instead? And those don't have to be like positive. They just different a lot of times, because sometimes you're in a scenario where basically there's no win, like, so if you're like, oh, well, if it's not positive, then, you got to understand that too. But it's given me a chance to work on this some more, which she wanted me to do before I came back in. And I'll be honest, I've been putting it off because of anxiety. So, and I know she'll understand that because she's a therapist, and that's, but it's given me an opportunity to work on that. So I've tried to do that, and, been as honest as I can be on there so that when I go in, I can talk to her about that. And, 'cause it's really tough, you know, it's so tough when from the point you wake up until you finally fall asleep that you're basically just beating yourself up. You know, it sucks. I mean, there's no way of sugarcoating that. It's not fun. And, you know, and I've tried, and, you know, I've talked with, you know, a couple people about it, and that's helped. But at the same time, it's also, I don't know. It's one of those where, you know, when you're really in like these kind of cycles, it's one of those like, you know, like if for anyone who has like a fat day, or you just look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, geez, I just look like a mess today, kind of a thing. Like no matter what anyone says to you, even if 100 people all tell you you're gorgeous or you're thin or whatever it is that it is you know, you think you aren't that day, you're just like, yeah, okay. You know, you start deflecting, and it's kind of that too, is even though I know it's true, things will be okay. It's not as bad as I think it is. All these kind of things, you know. Although in fairness, I did have somebody say it's not as bad as you think it is, and I'm like, yeah, duh. like I don't want to be a jerk, but I know that. Like I know this is manifested in my own head. Like I fully understand.
Part of the issue.
That's part of the issue, exactly. So. But anyway, it's like, it's one of those where like in lieu of therapy, I'm glad like we did Salty Language, you know, Saturday night. I'm glad we're doing this tonight because it gives me, like you were talking earlier in the show, and this is one of the things of, like you mentioned, I get out of the show also is this show has become like therapy light for me. You know, especially, I don't know if you remember like that period of time where my insurance, I ran out of times I could go to therapy.
Yep.
You know, and that was, what was that? That was like 4, 5, 6 months, something like, I mean, I think I ran out in August, so 4 months, 5 months, you know, whatever. So, because it was early August, so basically all of August, September, yeah. So, and being able to do this show really made a difference because I'm not entirely sure things would have went as well as they did during that time otherwise, because I really needed that place that safe place where I could come just, bleh, you know, and have that catharsis that therapy usually gives me, you know, because like I mentioned on the show a long time ago, it's like, I think at some point, I think you start becoming somewhat addicted to that catharsis. And I think that's part of why it works. You know, I'm treading real lightly with saying it that way, but I think there's something about that. Like when you're willing to go in because you know when you leave, you're going to feel great. Yeah. Kind of a thing, no matter what you talk about. Like, so, and I think that's part of why you're like, yeah, let's do another one, you know? So
my dog is having a dream right now, and it's really funny.
I was wondering what was going on there.
He's totally dreaming. That is so funny. Yeah, I've been putting off. I don't have to make any financial decisions right now, but it was something I said that I'm going to deal with at the end of the year. Yeah. Because of all the you know, we're doing some debt consolidation stuff, and I still you know, I've all the expenses I had earlier in the year, and all those things they're all done. They're taken care of. So it's time to like get back onto the plan. Yeah. And one of the reasons I need to do it, but I've been hesitant is because of what you're talking about, because I have to look at the numbers, and then the numbers are going to make me feel like a dirt ball.
Yeah. It's amazing. You know, this was not like, you know, money's not the topic for the night, or not even the intended topic for the night necessarily. But I was telling Heno, I just read something earlier today that kind of popped up, which is funny, just the timing of it, that discusses, you know, what happens in your brain basically when you worry about money. And, you know, any sort of stress is bad for your brain and body, and worrying about money, you know, it is bad. And it's especially bad if you also like feel like there's literally no hope on the horizon for you. You know, like people who are really poor basically are going to feel probably a little heavier weight than others because they don't feel there's any way out of it. But, so like anything, and, I'm saying this essentially, pretend I'm saying this to a mirror essentially, because this is why I'm saying it in ways, which is, be nice to yourself, especially this time of year, because a lot of people do spend more money than they mean to, because, they love seeing people open their gifts and be happy and all these kind of things. And I know it's a little late in the season, but also use this maybe going into next year, whether it's into next Christmas or just the year in general, to maybe let's all kind of start looking at, like, they showed a thing on TV and they were talking about how people worry about finances this time of year, which makes sense, right? And they were interviewing people, and one guy was like, yeah, he's like, I'm going to spend probably $1,000 or so. I'm going to go into debt and blah. And in my head, I'm going, you control that. And that's something to consider, if you worry about money and yet you're also very much willing to open extra credit cards and go super far into debt for whatever reason for Christmas presents, it's like, you're making your own destiny here, so that's, and we'll get into this a little bit in the next episode, because I'm going to talk about, when I talk about the future.
Yeah, that's,
so we'll talk about money, I'm sure, more next week, but
yeah, that's good. That's actually really good for me to kind of look at, okay, my intention for this week is I'm going to look into I'm going to look into what I've been putting off. It's,
yeah,
I need to look at the numbers this weekend.
Well, and the other thing too, before we get into the New Year's stuff next time, is we've talked about the whole, like, don't wait until the calendar says January to make a change. If it's something you want to, a change you want to make, do it.
Yeah.
I fully understand people putting stuff off. Like this point of the year, I fully get it if you wait till January, because this is like, everybody's doing other stuff this time of year. But at the same time, no time like the present, right?
It's true.
So, all right. I guess with that, you think that's a good place to hang it up for this week?
Good. Wow.
Right.
That just flowed.
It's kind of funny how we had no intention of going that way, but
no.
we still touched on what I wanted to talk about a little bit, but we'll get into
just kind of,
like I said,
wild.
In a couple of weeks we'll get into it in a little more depth. I'll save the thing.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I guess I should pull up the thing that's got. My email's not. Well, if you want to continue the conversation, I don't know. I don't have the links in front of me. I'll be just straight honest with you. No, you can go to our website, which is thecrazylifepodcast.weebly.com, I believe. Our email address is thecrazylifepodcast@outlook.com. If you want to reach out to Jen, you can find her on Twitter at Jen's Crazy Life. That's Jen with a G. Or, I forgot. I can't remember her other name. I think I finally put it in the notes, though. Her other Twitter account.
It's Whiskey Ditz.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's not whiskey, it's Whiskey.
Yeah. So
at Whiskey Ditz.
Like I said, I think it's in the show notes, or just hit her up on the other one and say, "Hey, what's your other Twitter?"
Yeah, that works.
Yeah. Or if you hit one of us up, we can find it for you, whichever. But anywho, you can also find her on her other podcast, which is called Shake the Sheets, where her and her co-host Nate talk about pop culture topics and such. The last one that showed in my download queue was, I believe, about Christmas movies. Maybe not, or Christmas, I don't know, something like that. But they talk about a lot of pop culture type stuff and whatever. So go check that out. It can be found at shakethesheets.com. How about you, Heno?
You can find me on Twitter at Ida Heno, and find me on Facebook, Heno Heiter, and Facebook Messenger. Those are easy ways to get a hold of me. And my other podcast, the Moving the Needle podcast, we just talked about the movie Grosse Pointe Blank, and that got released this week, so it was really fun. So if you're interested in hearing about that, go check it out.
Mm-hmm. And they can be found on Twitter at MTN Pod.
Yep.
For some reason, that finally stuck in my head. Took me forever for some reason to remember that Twitter address.
Really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
It's so easy too. Oh, awesome. My Gmail account's temporarily unavailable, so I can't pull up any links. Good thing I've already nailed most of them. Or I haven't. I don't know which. They're all in the show notes, so if you need any of the links, you can find them in the show notes. I'm just looking at them
right now, so.
Yeah. You can also find the show on Twitter at The Crazy Life Pod where I post when new episodes go up. You can find me on Twitter at Stunami. You can find my other podcast at salty_language or at saltylanguage.com. And probably don't play that at the family Christmas party, but because it is definitely not safe for
unless your family's very daring.
Again, though, go check it out, because Heno's on there this week. So if you can't get enough Heno,
oh yeah,
you have a lot of opportunities this week.
You do. You actually do. You have. I actually put that on Facebook this week on my post. I was like 3 podcasts to choose from.
Hashtag more Heno. Yeah, and of course, if you want to, if you feel you need help, please reach out to somebody. Oh, actually, that reminds me. Speaking of the reaching out to somebody part, of course, now this isn't going to load. The FCC just approved a 3-digit number for the suicide prevention number.
Right. Yeah.
And I wanted to pull well, it's not active yet, I believe, so doesn't have to be. But, which is a huge, huge, huge step for people in crisis, because instead of having to remember a full phone number, all you have to do is remember the 3 digits for the hotline. So good on them for finally doing something for this, because people have been trying to advocate for this for a little bit now, and I'm glad that, they didn't have to discuss it for 10 years before finally moving on it. This is a smart idea. So, more on that in the future, I'm sure. But if you do need help, please reach out to somebody. Again, there's the hotlines out there, there's groups out there, there's the text line, there's links in our show notes. I have more links over on our Facebook page, which can be found at Facebook.com. Facebook.com/group/Crazy Life Podcast. It's been a long day. Yeah. And, when you're out there, because boy, did I see a lot of people not doing this today, try to be kind to one another. We're all in a hurry. Everybody's rushing to get to parties or the store or wherever it is, but just try to be nice to people. There's really no excuse not to be. It's just, just please try to be nicer to people out there in general. And then I have one last thing here before I flip this over to Heno to close us out, which I saw this on Shower Thoughts today on Reddit, reddit.com/r/shower thoughts, which is a subreddit I enjoy looking at because sometimes there's some fun statements or whatever. This really, really hit true, which is people with chronic illnesses are often accused of faking being sick when they actually more often are faking being well.
Wow.
And I can 100% attest to that, because I probably fake being well more than I fake being sick. So, all right. So I guess with that, yeah, I almost went into the salty language close. Oh boy, Heno, you want to take us out of here? I guess. Whew.
I was just laughing because we're having family over on Christmas Day, my sister-in-law, and I went and bought eggs. So I'm going to live my omelet, and I'm not going to worry about yesterday's pizza, which is going to be tomorrow night's dinner.
I love it. Again, thanks for listening and happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.